My name is Grant Wright. I'm the Outreach and Missions Minister here at First Colony, and always an honor and a privilege to get to talk to you guys. Tonight's going to be a special night. It's going to be a fun night as we get to hear about what the Lord has done in and through the First Colony Church of Christ in our international mission work. And specifically as we take our faith out to the nations to see it spread down through the generations. And that is going to be a beautiful narrative that we get to hear tonight. But First Colony, we have 5 mission points. And so you may know these. You can say them with me if you do. We've got Haiti, Honduras, Colombia, Nepal, and... Man, you guys are on it. That's right. Uganda. So tonight specifically, we are celebrating what the Lord has done in our mission point in Uganda. We have just had a team that went over there 2 months ago in June, about 15 of our members, and we got to celebrate 25 years of mission partnership with them, which is just absolutely a beautiful testimony to the Lord and his faithfulness and what he's been doing. And so tonight's going to get filled stories. Yeah, absolutely. Tonight's just going to be filled with those stories of hearing about what God has done. There's just beautiful, deep relationships that have been established over that time. You know, we have sent so many people over there. Over 200 of our members have gone to go visit. My first trip over there when I was a high school senior, and we think about the 17 high schoolers that just went to Honduras. You know, that's where I was 20 years ago when I went to Uganda. And there's just a beautiful legacy of what has built because of the heart and the mission of this being a sending church and what God has been able to establish. So tonight, I want us to cover 3 things during our time. I want you to hear about our God of generations and what he's done through the generations at this mission point. And Shane and Carole Gage are going to be speaking to us. They were missionaries down there on the very first team. They have seen it from the whole spectrum. So that'll be a special thing for us tonight. I want you to hear about the ministries that the Ugandans have started and what they are currently leading. And so you're going to hear from team members who just traveled there. You're going to get to hear updates from them. One of our elders, Andy Pace, is going to be speaking to us. Nancy Penney, who is on our mission leadership team, and also Michael Potthoff, who's on our mission leadership team, are going to be speaking, telling stories about ministries. And then third, lastly, I want you guys to hear about next steps of our mission relationship and partner with our Ugandan brothers and sisters. As we get to establish this movement for Christ that goes down through the generations. And so Elder Brother Roth, Darrel Roth, and myself are going to be speaking on some of those things. So with that, just before we dive in, let me just say something that's really special about this work. We may or may not realize this, but this mission movement for Christ is a unique jewel within church missions. I'm going to say that again. This is a unique jewel within church missions. Every church wants to go start a church or start a movement that is self-sustaining. That's always the goal. But it is really hard to actually do that and accomplish that. And actually, one of the biggest reasons teams fail or missions fail is because of inter-team conflict. But here's a really powerful testimony that we're going to see tonight. We have seen generations of mission teams, in fact, 3 different mission groups that have gone over, 10 families that First Colony has supported that have made an impact over there. We have seen generations on our missions committee that have worked. They've passed it on to the next leadership team, passed it on to the next leadership team, and we've seen that pass on from generation to generation over 25 years at this church. We've seen generations for Ugandan leadership pass their faith on to the next generation. And that is something that is incredibly special that we get to hear about and something that we were a part of planting those seeds of faith 25 years ago. So as we talk about sustainability, there's those beautiful pieces, but then there's also the piece of financial self-sustainability. And this is kind of the capstone event of being able to create a whole movement that is self-sustaining. So what's beautiful about what we've been able to establish already is this entire movement. What you're going to hear tonight are things that they are leading, that they are starting, that they are doing. And what we are hoping to come alongside in is come along and help the final piece of sustainability. So 15 years ago, we built a building in town. It's a 2-story church building, and this is a part of the sustainability plan. The bottom floor was meant for generating income for the mission movement, so it's rental space, and it has been fantastic from day one. The second floor is where the main church town meets, but the money that's generated goes not just for that one church in town, it goes for all the churches in the village. So that's 17 churches right now that goes to support. What we didn't know when the start was how much we were going to make and how much mission budget we were going to need to sustain it. Well, 15 years later, we know that. And so as we're looking for sustainability for the future, one of our goals is to add 2 more stories onto that church building to create the income they need to be 100% self-sufficient, to have 100% of the funds they need for all the ministries. So we're going to get to hear about that tonight. We're going to get to hear about the ministries that this is going to fund and this capstone event. But with that, let me go ahead and invite Mr. Shane Gage, Ms. Carole Gage up and get just an insight of some of the history that has happened over the past 25 years, the growth and the change that you all have seen. Let's give them a warm welcome.
Hey. All right, well, we'll give a little bit of context, but going on this trip with this team that you're going to meet tonight was especially fun for us, and of course is probably a little different for us. And then going back, now we got to go back 5 years after we had left. We were in Uganda from 1997 up to 2008, then got to go back and visit 5 years later in 2013, and our daughter Ashley was just 5 years old then, so she was born right before we left Uganda. So, and then we went to, then I got to go back with Jay and Nick, 2 of the other original missionaries 5 years ago now, in 2017 for the 20-year anniversary. But what was incredible is to see, well, one thing is it was fun for us actually to see some of you guys who had not been before and see Uganda through their eyes and to see that, but also how much Uganda has changed and grown in the town of Mbarara where the churches are. But we also got to see dear friends who are Ugandans, and like the amazing thing was all these kids who were part of the first youth group of the town church that we helped with, that met in our living room for a couple of years, are now they all got 4 or 5 kids of their own and are leaders of the church and leading and working in international NGOs and relief work and refugee camps. And we were literally walking down the street one of the times we're there, and this kid stops and says, "Shane, Carole," and his name was Kiki Paul. And Kiki Paul was a kid who I never really thought would amount to anything, to be honest. He's working in the United Nations refugees up in North Sudan. And it's incredible what he's doing. And so just seeing stuff like that was a blessing for us. Seeing how the work has grown the last 10 years with either not very many or now not any missionaries there was incredibly gratifying as well. And I'll let you tag off of that.
Yeah. So along the lines of what he said, it was, we should have known that these kids would be older when we saw them. But to see these kids and a child's face on this grown-up man, taller than me, big beard, was shocking. And then, as he said, to find out that they're doing all these wonderful works was encouraging to see. And what I want to give you is the picture of, skipping the rock across the pond. This very much felt like skipping the rock across the pond because I had in my mind when I met them when they were children. And I had somewhat in my mind when we left when they were teenagers. And to come back now and to see them as grown-ups and to get to say, what's happening in your life now? Tell me about that story. What's happened in that story of your life up to this point? And to see and to hear how God is continuing to work in them. And to see and to hear how they are, carrying on, as Shane and Grant talked about, carrying on the next generation of the church was so encouraging. The other thing that was so encouraging and humbling was to get to have people come up to me and say, Carole, thank you so much for what you did. Banana bread. They said it so many times. Banana bread. I remember the banana bread that you'd make, Carole. Oh, I miss the banana bread. But they would connect it with, I remember when you came to the village and taught the ladies how to cook banana bread in a clay and firewood oven. And they, oh, wow, you still remember that. And I remember when you'd have us in your home for Bible studies. And they said that made a difference. So I was so grateful and I was so humbled, but I share it with you because we don't often have those opportunities to skip across the pond and go back and hear the people say, you know, that thing you did, it wasn't much to you, but it made a difference. So I want to encourage you with that because it meant a whole lot to me.
When we first moved to Uganda, the original team back in '97, after we left from here and spending the year we spent here, well, there was one missions principle that probably guided everything we did, we hope. And there's a lot of good principles, but one that really was a foundational principle beyond following Jesus and all that, but the missions principle was we were not going over to Uganda to plant an American tree in African soil, but to plant the seed of the gospel in African soil and let it grow into African trees, however Jesus leads them as they follow Jesus in their own culture. And what's cool is seeing now how they're doing that in their own culture. And I was telling several of the people while we were there, what's awesome is all the third and fourth generation churches. So there's the churches they have now that are 3 or 4 generations off the original ones we started, some of which are still there, some of which died off because some of those first church planting efforts were pretty disastrous, to be honest, because we didn't know what we were doing. But once we figured it out, and then now they planted churches that are planting churches, they're so much more mature and so much stronger than the original ones because God's working through them and doing something really cool. And so just to give you a little context, we went to start a movement of churches. So now 20 plus churches in 5 different clusters where they kind of cooperate together geographically. And to put that in context, there's over 3 million Ankoli people. It's the second largest people group in Uganda of over 30 distinct people language groups, okay? And so we're working in that group around the city of Mbarara, which is a large city now in Uganda. But that tree was planted, or the seed was planted, and it was amazing to see how it grew and how it's still growing. And we ask your prayers that it may still continue to grow. And thing I spoke about, and I found that I still had my voice and even more language aptitude than I thought I would remember, and had several opportunities to preach in some of the large gatherings we had of the church leaders and things. And what God really showed me was there are 2 challenges going forward are very, very large challenges still. And I'm going to ask you guys to pray for that because I challenged them on these 2 things over and over again. One is the next generation of leaders needs to grow up and mature more and they need more of this 3rd generation of leaders that needs to come up because every generation, the generations are so important. And that chain needs to continue. And I challenged them on how to do that. But also, as we complete this building project, what Satan will do is try to use it to divide and make building and money and enterprise like that is helpful for the movement to help it be self-sustained. It can also pit the town Christians against the village Christians, or who knows, the leaders could argue about it. And I think there's a real opportunity for God to do things, but opportunities for Satan to try to produce division. And I directly challenged them on that. And I told them we would be praying for them on that. So ask your prayers for unity among all the churches and for the next generation to be raised up. So as we close the Gage part of this, what's also cool is when our daughter was born in Uganda, right before we left there in 2008, we planted a tree at our house that we lived in all that time. And then Ashley got to go see her tree now. And that is Ashley and her tree. What was really cool is if you look closely, they have a goat carcass hanging there that we're about to cook up for lunch. And that was cool too. And so that's Ashley's tree. And that we got the hotel where we all stayed at while our group was there was just down the road from our house where we lived all those years. And it was neat waking up and looking up and go, oh, there's our house. Which our house is a radio and TV studio now, which is interesting. I don't know if we have time for questions. What kind of tree is that?
It's a
ficus tree. So that's Ashley and her tree. So I think that's all the time we had. But do remember those prayer requests and pray for the unity and the growth and the next generation among the Ankoli Church movement.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Andy, and I'm going to tell you an encouraging story tonight that takes place in a village that's not too far from Mbarara. And in that village lives a lady named Jane. And Jane is the pastor of a church that's dozens, maybe scores strong. And within that church, she decided, I'm going to start teaching people how to sew. I'm just going to offer sewing classes, teach people a trade, and see who takes me up on it. I think dozens of students later, when she spread across like 3 different villages and working with I don't know how many dozens of people, she got to the point where she told us that she was reaching people. It started in her church, right? But then people from the village came in. Then people from other villages started hearing about it and coming in. There were a few Muslim women in the back of the crowd when we had our celebration who would come from other villages. So people are starting to come for this, right? And she told us, she said, I'm getting to the point where I think I'm going to have to start turning away people. And we're like, well, that's a shame. Why? She says, well, I can only do so much. Y'all, she did this with 1 sewing machine. She is crazy. She's a dynamo. You'll figure this out later. But anyway, so she's doing this, and we're like, well, that doesn't sound right. So we took up a collection, and we sent our friend shopping, so we didn't get the Mzungu prices. But we bought some stuff for her, and this was awesome for us and for her. It felt like Christmas morning. We had this reveal where there was a dramatic trunk hatch reveal where the hatch of the van popped open, and we had a little moment that was like, driver, move that van, and it came down with all the stuff. And it was amazing. But in the end, she has now 4 sewing machines. Y'all, there is no telling what Jane will do with 4 sewing machines. I can't even wait. But a sewing machine is just metal parts, right? It's just gears and widgets and moving metal parts that are designed to spin to perform the function of putting a thread through fabric, right? But it's more than that. There's a spiritual aspect to this gift that Jane has. In her hands, this will be used to reach who knows how many people in who knows how many villages. And if you know Jane, it won't just be sewing lessons. The word of the Lord will come along with it. They will be, if you will allow me the pun, they will be woven into everything that she does. So everyone from the people from the other villages who have never heard of the Lord, from the Muslims, to everyone who comes to her, will receive a gift. So I just wanted to tell that story and encourage you by saying, if you've ever donated money to a foreign mission, one is the dollar tends to stretch a lot further in other countries just because you can buy more with it, right? But it also tends to stretch further physically because people will take it and add work and make more money with it. And they will multiply it. But it will also, and most importantly, it will also be multiplied spiritually. So that's the story that I have for you, and it's I can't wait to see how it turns out.
And to tag on to what Andy had to say, many of you participated in collecting sewing supplies for us to take to augment the work that would be done with those sewing machines. So we appeared with trunks full of zippers and fabric and thread and measuring tape and scissors. I've got to tell you one story. One of the women came up to me later after all those supplies, and who knew what was going to be the most exciting thing, but she said, sometimes our fabric is slippery, but you have brought us holding pins. And so she had described how they would take like 2 people on either side of the sewing machine to hold the fabric straight while the lady in the middle was sewing because they didn't have straight pins to hold the fabric together. But we have now brought them holding pins, thanks to you. So all of that. I am here. I mean, I'm so excited about any of the things that we could talk about each one. We don't even have medical outreach on tonight's list. There are so many things that the churches there are doing, but I want to specifically focus on education. We visited 3 primary schools that are led by the members of the church there, as well as 1 emerging technical school for street children who do not have access to formal education, but do have the ability to learn a trade. Education doesn't work the same way in Uganda as it does here. There's not the option for free, accessible public education. Almost all schools are fee-based, and whether or not you get an education depends on if your family can afford to send you to school. The mark of success for education has been to send your children, even your very young children, 5 years old, to boarding school, often in a different village. And Christian families have been torn apart by saying, somebody else is raising my child because they're all, they're eating, they're sleeping far away from us, and we only get to see them on the weekends. If only we had Christian schools in our own village, then children could stay at home with their families, and we could have influence on their lives on a daily basis, and it would be more affordable, more accessible for the children. So the church there, the entire movement, has pooled its resources. It has caught this vision, and they now have 3 primary schools that we got to go and visit. You can see that each one has a different flavor. Some are more military in structure. Some have the resources to have desks and chairs while others sit on the floor. Sometimes the only education material that the children have is posters that are fastened to the walls, and you'll see some of those here in a second. But one of the things that was unique about our trip and our ability to interact with the children in these schools was that we had 6 young people along on our trip in the middle of our group of 15. Those 6 young folks who came with their parents, that made it so much easier for our team to interact with the kids in each one of these schools. I want to emphasize to you the value of going on a trip like this with your family. Adults are there to be able to interpret what's going on for their children. The children can see their parents having interaction cross-culturally, and from an early age, they know how important this is, and they can kind of catch the vision that they too can have this kind of interaction. And an additional aspect of involving children in this trip was that back home, you may remember we were having Vacation Bible School during that same time. And children here at First Colony were collecting their nickels and dimes to come up with enough money to be able to supply children's Bible story books for these churches that we got to visit. And so you have seen in the videos the presentations that we were able to make in each one of those villages and also at the town church. Now, one of the good things about getting to go on this trip was that there were no missionaries to be intermediaries between the visitors and the Ugandans. In times past, that was necessary, but now, as a sign of maturity, we were able to go and interact directly with the Ugandan Christians. They have matured to the point where that works for them. They're able to be excited about the ministries that God has led them to, and we are able to step back and say, tell us more about what you're doing. They came up with these schools themselves. It was their idea. They planted where they thought they should be. They hired the teachers. They found the resources. This is not a First Colony initiative there. Just like Shane said, we helped fertilize the ground. We brought some seeds, but they have planted what has grown up to be African trees. So, education, children, all supporting, again, that theme of multi-generational outreach, both here and in Uganda. So next, we have some examples of those multi-generational travelers to First Colony, the Potthoff family.
Thank you. We're excited to be here to share this experience with you. My wife and I, when we first started dating before we got married, missions was one of the things that brought us together. We've always had a passion and a love for that. And one of our dreams was to bring our entire family on a mission trip, and this was the perfect opportunity. So I want to say thank you to the church for your willingness to send people like us to do this. It meant so much to us. We got so much out of it. And I want to share specifically this little experience that we had with these street children there in the town that we were staying. One night we had seen them and experienced them, and Andy Pace and I went with one of the the church members there because he didn't feel like it was safe to bring young people and things like that. So we took some leftovers from this restaurant because we had way too much food. I mean, we got so much food. We're doing typical American things, right? Just so much food. And we brought it to them, and it was both incredible and heartbreaking at the same time because there were kids as young as 5 years old all the way up to, I think one was 25 maybe, and they didn't have anything. Some of them were crying because they hadn't eaten in 3 and 4 days at that point, and they were so excited to get what we were bringing them, and it meant a lot to our family. Now, I'm the yacker of the family, so I'm going to cut myself off and let my wife and the rest of my kids speak too.
So what I would say is Nancy was just talking about the education and how they have to pay for the education over there. And one of the things that the church members brought up is that these kids don't have any parents. So there's no one who's providing the education for them. And, you know that education is going to go a long way in their lives. So that was heartbreaking to see. But one positive thing that we saw was they were all just so excited to see us. I mean, they they were eating up every word out of our mouths. And Mike told them that they had a Father in heaven. Even though they didn't have one here, they had a Father in heaven that saw them and knew them and loved them so much, and they ate up every word. So I know that our church is already praying for Uganda, and it's he's doing amazing things over there, and I ask that y'all will just pray for these kids because I know that God can move in their lives and their heart. And yeah, so if you can just join us in praying for them.
My experience with the street kids was, I just wanted to say how amazing they really were. They were so happy, and like my mom said, they ate up every word we said, and they acted like we were the kings of the world, but they were just as important as us. But I've been trying to I am going to raise money for them a little bit by selling some energy drinks and snacks. But the cameraman on the trip, he said, whatever you do, it just counts. And I'm just thinking of that. And I just wanted to say again, these kids were amazing.
One final note, I just want to encourage you to bring your family on the mission field. And it doesn't have to be Uganda. That's not necessarily an easy trip, but there's so many great experiences. And I want to thank you for participating because I want you to understand how impressive it is to see a work for 25 years. This is our first year. So 25 years of work and effort and love into that, to me, was so impressive to see, as so many others have mentioned, just the fruits of all the labor of people in here and the hearts you've poured out and the prayers and the financial gifts and just everything that you've done to make this happen was such an amazing blessing. I felt spoiled. I was like, I'm getting experience all this. This is my first year. So I just wanted to really encourage all of you here and thank you from the bottom of my heart for that, because it was really incredible to see the fruit of all of those efforts working and the churches that have been spread. And that ministry, by the way, was led by Chiza, who was our photographer and videographer. He himself was a street kid at one point. So that was really impactful for me. I didn't even know that till the end. He didn't even share his story till the very end. And I was like, oh, you're a street kid too. Thanks for telling me now, you know. But anyway, it was an amazing experience, and we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks, guys. I will tell you, it's hard to wrap up, even in a 30-minute quick thing like this, a trip halfway around the world in 30 minutes. I would encourage you, pick us out. Let's go grab a coffee. Let's sit down over lunch. There is, seeing these videos, and it brings back so many memories. It doesn't even scratch the surface. It really doesn't even scratch the surface. Do you agree? I mean, there's so much more. Every one of those layers, and now every time I see a video, I'm going to be going, there's like 20 layers deep there. I need to get into that. So anyway, I would encourage you to do that. This was our first trip overseas, and I've been a part of this. My wife and I have been a part of this church for the better part of the last 30 years. we knew these guys when they were younger and going over, and we contributed and participated a little bit. We never really immersed ourselves in it. What a difference. What a difference. So I would encourage you to do that. Before I get into some of my remarks about the leadership in the building, I want to let you guys know what a fantastic leader that we have here in Grant overseeing these missions. I've seen it for years. I saw it firsthand, and the level of detail, the level of attention, the care, the love, man, we are blessed, and people are blessed because of that man right there. So thank you. This entire team, we got to get to know each other, and that was a team. Nancy prepared us. Many people prepared us, but Nancy was unbelievably well prepared. There was not a moment that we didn't know what we were doing it was just boom, boom, which if y'all know me, I like that. So I need to know kind of what the schedule is. So she did an awesome job, and thank you for making the trip so enjoyable for us. We didn't have a thing to worry about. So excellent, excellent job there. And I also want to recognize Wes, who didn't get to go with us. Missed you, and I will tell you, I witnessed the people who missed you dearly. So you were there in spirit. Well, my son got to go on this trip. He's graduated high school this year. He got to go to Honduras as well. So, and he's going off to A&M. He's actually was taken to a camp. Bridget just rolled in from a 6-hour journey taking him. So he's had an incredibly busy summer, but the experience that he got through this was incredible. And I would encourage you, those who may know him, sit down with him and listen to some of those stories. I've got a quote at the end I'll share with you that he has shared with us. The investment that our church has made in time and in money has come back 200-fold. Just trust me on that. You'll see it if you get the opportunity, but it has. One of the cool things, and we've had the benefit of it, Shane got to preach many times over there. Let me tell you, Shane Gage is in his element preaching in Africa. I mean, he kills it. It's amazing. And they respond to him like nobody's business. He's known them and he's led them for so many years. That was awesome to see. So great people over there, but guys, we have a phenomenal team here that's leading a lot of this, not only in Uganda, but at all the different mission points. Let's see, a couple other things I wanted to touch on. The people there were amazing. I just would say they're grateful, joyful. Every one of them is an entrepreneur. They're hardworking, they're content, they're hospitable. You show up at what appears to be not much of a home with 15 people, and next thing you know, they have rolled out the red carpet and they're giving you everything that they've got as if they were kings. And they were incredible, incredible people. And so we became fast friends with them and really through that deeper relationship with Christ. A couple of the things that I really enjoyed were simply the handshakes, the embraces. They come to you each morning and man to man, it could be a woman to woman too, but how was your rest? I love that. How was your rest? You might interact for 2 or 3 minutes just saying good morning. And then you go about. In America, and Ronnie's hit on this recently, talking about the Western culture, hey, how are you? And we move on. We don't even look for a response, much less engage in it. And I just endeavored to do that. And I've already gotten away from it, and I want to be reminded of it. And I've said to some of these guys, how was your rest? Just to remind me. We need to slow down and see some of these things. But the joy and the gratefulness that they have is huge. The leadership team overseeing the movement, they're committed, man, and they're passionate. I can tell you they're not standing over there doing this. I can promise you that. If you're sending your money over there, if you're supporting these missions, it is going to good works by good people. And that's exciting to see that they know. In fact, I had one of their elders say to me, we are ready to start doing this on our own. Well, 25 years of that support has got them to that point. And so it's not about just sending money, man. They are making a difference on that side. Amen. The worship, this is kind of a personal thing, but one morning was 4 hours of worship, and the music was awesome. And I come back to service here, and we had 2 songs and we're, okay. And I was ready for more. I mean, the passion and the praise that they offer to God is contagious. And man, it just makes you want to pour your heart out to God and praise and worship Him during that worship time. I'll wrap up here, Grant, because I know I'm rambling. But the building. So we do some things in my business with buildings, and so we kind of got involved to help out with this little building that was built about 15 years ago, and we're going up a couple of floors, as you saw. That was a grassy knoll there 15 years ago. Now there's a 2-story building, and in a short while, there's going to be a 4-story building there. And these guys are using it as a tool. I mean, they think about that, and when you're giving, think about they're using it as a tool, and it is going to be a beacon to that community. It's a tool. They're generating revenue, and they're using a portion of it for their own church, for the church and the entire movement, and then renting the rest. And so that's a tool that will allow them to expand even more than the 17 churches that they have today. So it's incredible. We're going through processes and planning and procurement and execution, and we're helping with that. But I think more importantly, what I'm trying to do and what we're trying to do in those meetings is provide guidance, teach and show them how to do it as they run the business, or giving them ideas about other things to help them with that business. And man, they're all ears and they're soaking it up. They're very humble people, and they're very hardworking. As you can imagine, construction in a third world country has its challenges, but with God's hand, and when you see the benefits like we have, it's clear it's well worth it. And I look forward to the day when Judd goes back and sees the completion of this building and some of the other projects that are going on, and that next generation is then encouraged to continue to grow that. Michael said it a while ago, we got the benefit, those of us who had never been there, and I said this to some of the folks who had been involved, we got the benefit of being at a 25-year celebration, and we had never done anything but maybe wrote a check. And I felt a little bit unworthy of that, but that's our church. That's God's church. That's God's people that have done all that. And so it was incredible to be able to step into that and see that work that has gone on for 2.5 decades there. Lastly, I just want to point out, it's as been pointed out, Uganda is not our only mission point. There are others, and there are other good things going on. Judd went to Honduras with Bridget, and one of the interesting things that he said was, one of the comments he said many. He's a quirky, clever young man. One of the things he said that stood out, because he just went to Africa and saw that halfway around the world, and now he's in Honduras and he's seeing that. And his comment was, poverty looks different in different places. And he noted that during one of their prayers, the Hondurans were praying for Africans, for the needy people of Africa. They had no idea. He had just been there 2.5 weeks ago. And so just God God has got his finger on all of this, and I wish that y'all could see the depths of all of these stories, because there's so much more to it than what you're seeing here. So I would just encourage us to continue to be a church full of prayers and support of others who are in need of basic necessities and Jesus. Let's continue to build on this 25 years over the next 25 years. Thanks.
Thank you, Darrel. Appreciate everybody that shared tonight. That was a joy and a privilege. But again, let me just say this about this mission movement for Christ. This is a unique jewel in church missions. It really is. And for us to just step back, we got to hear some of these stories tonight of the missions that they have started, the ministries that they're starting and leading. But let's just take a second to listen about what is happening among this church movement that was started 25 years ago. There are now 17 churches. There's 70 church leaders. There's 3 primary schools as they invest in Christian leadership. They're providing clean water to communities. Some of those wells we dug years ago. Some of those they're digging now on their own resources, and some they're planning to do in the future using their own resources. They have started a medical clinic to serve their community. They've started a sewing school to help widows and young ladies. They've started a street boys ministry to serve homeless orphans. They've started Bible studies in homes in all of these 16 villages that they're reaching out to. They regularly are hosting ladies' conferences, youth conferences, leadership conferences. They're doing evangelism on a regular basis, doing outreach. One of those churches is of the 17 they've started this year. So that is one that they have started on their own resources, on their own time. They're now sending out their own missionaries and supporting their missionaries around Uganda. I mean, you step back and think about that. I mean, that's every church's dream, that you could start a mission that is doing just that. And so, church, let me just stop for a second and just say thank you. Thank you for your partnership in this mission, because some of you guys have been doing this for decades. Some of you guys have been over there. Some of you guys have been praying about this. Some of you guys have sacrificed financially to give for this. And I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. And for our brothers and sisters in Uganda, they would say thank you, thank you, thank you. Actually, they would say, Webari Manonga, Webari Manonga. But guys, as we come to this conclusion, this capstone event that we've talked about is completing the town church, adding those 2 floors, creating 100% sustainability. And I want to say, too, just on the note of giving, last Mission Sunday, you guys gave a tremendous amount. It was by far our biggest year of mission giving. And so, again, Webari Manonga, thank you. It was tremendous. We've had other outside foundations that I've talked to. They've gotten excited about this. They've caught the vision. They've been giving towards this project. And we're going to have another opportunity this upcoming Mission Sunday to give again so that we can get 100% of those funds to complete that building so that they've got what they need for 100% of all these ministries that they're starting. So, church, I'm excited that we get to finish this building as a gift to our brothers and sisters there in Uganda. Yeah, absolutely. You can clap for that. I'm excited that we get to establish this movement for the generations that's going to be passed down. This is such a beautiful faith of Christian faith. As you hear these stories, this is what they're doing. This is not what we're doing anymore. This was that seed that was planted, and they have taken that seed, and it has grown, and it is a beautiful faith that's getting passed down through the generations there among the Onkoli people. So I'm going to close with this verse that's been kind of our theme verse for our Uganda mission work, and it comes from Psalm 78. And this is our prayer for this work. We will tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, his power, and the wonders he has done, so the next generation would know them, even the children yet to be born, and they in turn will tell their children. Then they will put their trust in God, and they will not forget his deeds, but they will keep his commandments. That's our prayer for our Ugandan brothers and sisters. That's our prayer for our church. That's our prayer for all of our mission points. Amen and amen. Thank you, church. Sure appreciate you all. Webari Manonga.